Since the beginning of this series, we have gone over the greatness of leaders in both past and present, and we have looked at the traits that have helped them become the leaders they were destined to be. However, just as it is important to learn from great success, there is even greater knowledge gained from failures and mistakes. Today we intend to do just that, as we look at the basic characteristics of failed leadership and the consequences thereof. Why do leaders fail? The answer can often be rooted back to three deadly sins: pride, greed, and narcissism. In most instances, failure occurs because the company executives become out of touch with their lower-level employees and business practices, or by focusing on profits rather than their people. It can also come from a poor attitude of believing they are either too big to fail or that their company is the center of the economic universe. On the opposite side of the spectrum, businesses can fail due to micromanagement, where the upper-level executives intervene too much in the daily business practices, which comes from a distrust of your company managers and employees. Micromanagement is usually a problem for CEOs who think that their business is too small to succeed. They worry constantly and can usually stifle creativity to the point that their business stalls due to a lack of innovation or motivation from their miserable employees. Either end of the spectrum can lead a business to ruin. To succeed, you have to exist somewhere in between.
What happens when a CEO doesn't work in a company or seems to be running it into the ground? The board holds a meeting. This, of course, can lead to a lot of bad publicity as the leader either steps down or the business completely crumbles. An example of this is the dot-com bubble of 2000, which saw a plethora of new startup online companies become overnight successes and within a few months, overnight failures. When the company loses their CEO or the business fails, it can be hard for the people to have faith in leadership or the thought that it is safe to rely on others. Such was the case in the 30s when the Depression began and people realized that it wasn't going to be going away anytime soon. People lost trust in the banks, government, and themselves. It would take FDR and some serious conditions to fix the nation. A more recent example came in the 2008 housing crash, which reminded people once more that trouble can arise even in today's world. People lost their homes and jobs, and felt betrayed by everyone from the government to Wall Street.
After the initial shock of leadership failing to do its job comes anger, and from anger arises protest as people demand to hold someone accountable, even when there's no one at fault. These groups often reject traditional forms of leadership and become something of a phantom, not really having any organization, just anger and loose feels. These groups become problematic as they often do not consider the immense complexities involved that lead to whatever problems they are protesting. Or worse, they don't care. One example of this is the Occupy Wall Street movement that grew immensely around September 2011 in Zuccotti Park, located in New York City's financial district. The problem with these groups, unlike the civil rights movement of the 1960s, was leadership. The civil rights movement had leaders and organizations that helped coordinate the movement and make sure it would have the strongest impact possible. Occupy Wall Street did not. As a result, while being a strong presence in the media and in the area which they protested, they failed to make any real impact and were forced out of the vicinity by police in November of that same year. That isn't to say, however, that all businesses are doomed to fail if the leadership fails. One of the samples comes from one of the greatest companies, Disney. With the passing of Walt Disney, the company fell into a slum and made several lackluster films that caused them to temporarily lose their position as the greatest animation company in the world. However, they recovered and soon went right back into consistently making masterpiece after masterpiece. In the end, the failure of leadership can be devastating to people who work under it, but the good news lies that when one leader falls, a new one will always rise to take their place.